Hi, I'm Rachel Dillon, and together with my husband, Marcus Dillon, we lead Who's Really the Boss podcast, where we highlight the joys and challenges of running a business with your spouse or family. Our mission is to strengthen families and businesses by helping listeners avoid the mistakes we have made so they can lead and live happily ever after. Welcome back to another episode of Who's Really the Boss podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
And we are welcoming another very special guest with us today. We have Christine Nitzke. Welcome, Christine.
Thanks for having me.
And Christine, we have been friends and working together for just a little bit. But I'd love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself, kind of what you've been doing, and even just anything that you'd like to share with the listeners.
Oh, thanks. So I have been working in and around the public accounting industry for probably longer than I care to admit. I actually came into the accounting industry just before the year 2000. So Y2K in my firm, I was leading those sort of initiatives to work with clients. I started working with small business clients and implementing software. And when I started helping them with workflows and changing how that they did things, that's where I found that I really enjoyed working. And so I've carried that kind of throughout my career. And more recently, that has looked like working with accounting firms and helping them change their processes and their workflows and getting organized and efficient and profitable. And not working as hard or as many hours as they should to be more efficient too. So I think it's been a couple of decades of just moving from small businesses, generally speaking, to focusing on accounting firms exclusively.
I'm going to ask the question, which one do you prefer more, accounting firms or small businesses?
So I really like accountants. I don't know. I should probably unpack that at some point. I don't know what that is. I'm even married to an accountant. But accountants are just nice people and they work with small businesses. So I think the combination of the two is just, it's the right spot for me.
Yeah, no, that's great.
And fun fact, you just had kind of a big life event here recently. So we're recording this at the end of August. And so just in the last week, you had a big life event. Why don't you tell us about that?
Absolutely. So my husband and I have a daughter who just moved on campus at college. And that college is a 6-hour drive from home. We joke that she couldn't get further from us and still be in-state tuition rate. But it went well. And of course, there's all of the first week chaos that's happening with her. But she's doing really well. Checked in with her earlier in the week. And she said, I went to my first class. I went to the beach with my friends. I went to Target and I ate dinner at Panera. I am literally living my best life. So I don't think I have to worry about her.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's so unusual to even think about Michigan and hear the word beach because it's the lake and she is really close to Canada, right? So it's one of those where as somebody from the South, from Texas, that's just unusual to hear those two go in the same sentence.
Absolutely. And I'm sure I'll be sharing with you as the seasons change just how much snow she has and what that beach looks like in December and January. Yeah.
Yeah. It'll be a little less wet, I assume, and you can just walk across parts of that water. So,
absolutely. Yes. Ice skating
yeah.
is an event up there. Yeah.
Wow. Fun stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, we
That's
wouldn't know
awesome.
anything about that. Launching kids and preparing to launch kids. So it's a fun season to be
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. You don't know a thing about it, right?
Well, Marcus, will you share a little bit about how most recently we've been working with Christine?
Yeah. So Christine, we've known her in a past life in another organization and got to become friends with her there. Her counsel is very good for us, both at the firm and at the collective by DBA level. So she's been helpful over the last year or so as we've kind of moved forward in helping other accountants really unpacking what DBA does, what DBA has done to be successful, but then also where DBA could improve. She's helped kind of provide perspective on that. But then also Collected by DBA, obviously the event that we had in April, Christine was a helpful part in that. In addition to the upcoming events in November, she'll be helpful for that as well. So, Christine's background is just, right in line with so much that we do on a daily basis, not only for ourselves, but for others. And I think that's where she is now helping within Collective as an advisor for those firms that are seeking assistance, because, a background of implementing software, knowing what to do and what not to do, just what decisions to make on a daily basis, that gets overwhelming really quick whenever you're managing a team, managing clients. And so that experience is very worthwhile. I know Christine left off some of her professional credentialing, and I don't even want to go there, but I think there's like a black belt, but it doesn't relate to like karate or anything. And also all the 3-letter designations and degrees and stuff like that. So, she's a very great person to have on the team. We're excited, to have her here and for what she can do for others as well.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here, both of you. And yeah, all of the alphabet soup. I mean, it's helpful. And I apply it when working with any of the firms, or even just with inside Collective, and how can we make things better to help the firms that we're working with.
Yeah, I'm sure that also extends to family and daughters sometimes, right? So
Yeah, I don't think she's a planner by accident, right?
yeah.
And related to all of those credentials and things, share with us the best piece of advice you've ever been given. And just a heads up, I do know one that you might share. And so that just felt like the perfect segue into sharing about the best piece of advice you've ever been given.
Sure. So the best piece of advice I've ever been given was given to me by my grandfather. When I was probably about middle school age. And so I was the first granddaughter after 6 grandsons. So I was the apple of his eye. And the best bit of advice, though, that he gave to me was to learn as much as you can, because that's one thing no one can ever take from you. And he was a child who grew up in the Depression and saw what can happen with material things. They can be very fleeting. But knowledge and education was something that you would always have. And so that has really shaped me throughout my life, which is learning more and being curious and asking questions. And so, to Marcus's point, with all of the black belts and alphabet soup, yeah, I think that's a part of it. And it's just continuing to learn more, be better. And how can that be helpful? And how can I share that with others?
That's great. Those are great words of wisdom. And once you figure that out, I'm sure you could live a happier life. So I'm sure that was what carried him through, what he learned through those seasons. And it's great to bestow that upon other generations. And you be able to quote it, right, years later. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, very cool. Well, I think part of why we wanted to have you on today, and in addition to like just your awesomeness, and kind of introducing you a little bit more to the listeners and maybe people who you may work with in the future, we see a lot in the social realms and also in our business clients about operating systems that exist within a business. And so when you think operating system, we're not talking like Windows 95 loaded up with a CD-ROM, or back then it was probably floppy disk. But I think there is a lot of noise, a lot of talk out there about operating systems, and we don't want to discount those at all. So our hope today is just to unpack one of those that is very talked about, and that would be EOS. So that was introduced in a book that's very highly read, right? Traction by Gino Wickham. And so I think there's a lot of concepts to unpack there, but I don't know about both of you, but when I open up social, I see a lot of, hey, our business runs on EOS, different L10 meetings, kind of different things are thrown out there. Can you unpack what EOS is and maybe even take it a step further as it relates to small businesses and accounting firms?
Sure. So EOS, standing for the Entrepreneurial Operating System, is just that. It's a system to run your business. And so it's a great process is what it is. And it helps business owners keep at the forefront the things that they're trying to achieve through quarterly meetings with an implementer, or if they self-implement, they have an integrator in their business to do that. It it helps them first identify their vision, where they want to go, and then what their goals are. And then it helps them break those down into those quarterly meetings and then further breaking them down into those bite-sized pieces or rocks that they're called. And so what are those big rocks that you're focusing on each quarter? And then you check in again at the next quarter and the next quarter to keep momentum going. And that is great. It's fantastic to keep those things front of mind. There's some science behind why they do them quarterly, because as humans, about every 90 days, we start to get bored or we start to fall off with momentum and motivation. And so then another check in at 90 days that ramps up the motivation and the focus on things. So it's a good process. In fact, I have recommended the traction book to accounting firms when they're looking for some structure to how to get focused and get some things accomplished in the firm. And I actually looked at becoming an EOS implementer too. And why I am not, and why that credential is not after my name, is because of one particular requirement for the implementers, and that was purity. And they require their implementers to only consult on the EOS system. So for me, not being able to help an accounting firm specifically with an operational issue or with a workflow, if I would have been prohibited to do that, which I would have been at risk of losing my franchise license. That was the decision maker for me. That was a deal breaker. I wanted to be able to specifically use my experience and my knowledge to help accounting firms. And I even had asked about niching. Were there EOS implementers who worked in specific industries? And the answer was a resounding no, because it's a system that works for all businesses, which is great. It's great. But I kept thinking, well, what if a firm doesn't know how to implement some other things, or there's just some underlying causes that are there creating the pain that they're working toward? They could get there so much faster if we were able to explain to them, if you make this change, wouldn't be possible under EOS as an implementer.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, and I'm not going to try to run the conversation, Rachel. So feel free to mute me or something if you really want to do that. Let's talk first about the author, right? Gino.
Yeah.
So he writes books, and a lot of times authors are tasked with just writing more books. Speaking, their thoughts onto paper, putting that all out there for the world, and then it's on to the next book. But obviously, Traction, what came out of Traction with EOS, has lasted longer than most people would have expected, maybe even him. I know that EOS, did it go through also like a rebrand, or do they call it something different now, or is it still EOS?
It is still EOS. What I did see most recently was that if you have opted not to work with an implementer and you've read the book and you want to have someone in your own business implement that, they have a 1-day boot camp now for business owners or a leader who can do that.
Okay. So a lot of, we see that a lot in the market, whether it's Mike Michalowicz and Profit First methodology, kind of, a system that people could follow, or Donald Miller and building a story brand, just different things that are out there. But obviously, this operating system has really caught on in businesses. I love the fact that you also investigated what it would look like in the concept of purity, which you didn't believe was, the direction you wanted to go. Something that I don't, implementers, you see that in the market. You see people that have that EOS credential behind their name, and that's obviously what they do. So I don't want to, break any NDA that you signed with EOS or the Traction Group, obviously. What does it look like to become an EOS franchise? Because I have a couple follow-up questions on just the structure of those and why they're a certain size.
So to become an EOS implementer, it is a franchise. You're buying into it. And as of this year in 2024, they've increased that price. So
Yeah.
it's upwards of $50,000 just to have the franchise and be able to call yourself an EOS implementer. In terms of education, it is self-study as well. So they tend to look for implementers or would-be implementers who have a number of years of experience doing some kind of consulting, or they have been an integrator at one point in their own company. I did ask about possibly shadowing even, and they don't allow that. So they keep it very kind of closed, I think is how it felt
Hmm.
to me too. But I did on my own reach out, find a couple of EOS implementers in my area, asked about that. And they told me really the the education that you get from them, in addition to having the franchise, is how to network and do business development and sales. But the actual EOS process is a self study.
Okay. Really interesting. So franchise model, 50,000 upfront. I assume some type of royalty or some type of ongoing subscription to remain kind of credentialed.
100%. So they have a system where you'll keep your notes and have access to other resources that you can give to your own clients. And that is approximately $1,200 a month.
Okay. So not a small expense. And obviously, they want to grow their base, they want to expand that, and they're doing that in a certain way. It's interesting that what we used to call just consultants, right? Just good old consultants. That's kind of now everybody has their own thing, and EOS implementer is just one of those. And to pay the price to be considered that and have that gold medallion as far as trust goes, that's interesting. But I think it still comes back to it's only as good as the individual implementer or their process to learn the system. And it doesn't sound like there's a good way to know how good they are until you engage them.
Exactly. And so with EOS implementers, they do have levels of experience. So, how many implementations have they done? And then there's a badge or a marker of some indication that will let others know when you're seeking out an implementer just how experienced they are at it. So, there are, I believe, 3 levels, if I'm remembering correctly, of EOS implementers. And so, if you're feeling like, okay, maybe I don't want to take a chance on a newer one, and I can look for somebody with some more experience and look for a different badge level. Also, their fees are also in line with their badge level. So the higher their badge, more experienced they are, their fees are also much higher.
Sounds like a religion. We watch a lot of documentaries like on different religions and cults and things like that, and Scientology, whatever. It's just there's some ones out there that you kind of scratch your head on. But that's interesting. Kind of my last point on this before I'll give it back to Rachel is most implementers I see are solo. So they operate as their own entity. They're more just a one-off consultant. They don't have a team around them. Is that I don't see many businesses, many teams going in and implementing EOS for other small business clients. Is that a good observation, or am I just kind of not looking in all the right spots?
No, you're spot on because the franchise agreement is for an individual to do that. And because it is so focused on networking and business development and building up your own clients, and these are not long term per se engagements that you have. It's maybe about 2 years at most. So you're continually filling your pipeline. So you are working as an individual that franchises as an individual. There are a handful of companies out there doing that as teams, and that is a different franchise model that you have to work with EOS. And I didn't investigate that, but I would suspect because there are so few of them, it might be either cost prohibitive or they really keep a really tight cap on how frequently they want that in the marketplace.
Yeah. And do those individuals, do they set their own pricing for EOS implementation, or is that some kind of guideline through that program that they do for business development?
They have guidelines for what
Okay.
you should be charging. That way, you don't have someone completely coming out of the gate That way
Price
you don't
sensitive. Yeah.
price sensitive. You're not trying to win based on price.
Yeah. No, that's great. They don't want to dilute the brand, kind of have some
Correct.
other hurdles to overcome. So awesome stuff. That provides a great background, probably for a lot of the additional conversation that we'll have here in a bit. So, Rachel, I know Christine and I have ping pong back and forth. What do you got?
Yeah. So, one thing that stood out to me as we were preparing for this and talking through more of the reasons, Christine, why you didn't actually pursue and go through with becoming a franchisee was that point of purity. And for me, what stands out to me is just one, your attention to detail, two, your integrity, because maybe they would never know that you were doing other things that were outside of that, but you knowing that that wasn't what they intended for you to do, and just kind of saying, no, I don't think this is for me. And then also just your intentionality of knowing that you want to look at the whole business. And if that's an accounting firm, your experience lended itself to know there are specific things in accounting firms that I wouldn't be able to really speak to or help with based on the framework of EOS and what I've committed to. And so I really wanted to talk specifically in that direction, as far as perhaps an individual story from a client that you know that you have worked with in the past where you would have had a hang up and had to stop short of helping them completely, or even just in general terms of multiple things that you remember that you would have to stop short of.
Sure. So I think a good example is a firm that I've worked with who he took over the firm from his dad. And he had worked in the firm alongside dad, pretty common story for a lot of years. And so he inherited quite a few inefficiencies and quite a few maybe non-ideal clients and the whole mix, right, that we're all familiar with. And in working with him, I was able to help him reimagine what his tax process looks like in his firm, because he had everyone who was a tax preparer in his firm touching that from start to finish, and then showing him a way to be more efficient with that and implementing a tax administrative professional who handles things at the front end and back end. That was just sort of mind blowing for him at this point, but he got it right away. He could see it. And so, had I decided to move ahead with EOS as an implementer, I would not have been able to work with him on that workflow. I wouldn't have been able to help him with that. He would have still been struggling with all of the tax returns and all of those things, and I wouldn't have been able to do that. It would have broken the franchise covenants, if you will, those 5 ideals for the implementer. So he did implement it. I'm thankful that I was able to help him with that. He's doing really well. He's got his arms around his tax process and all of those clients, and he's gone from not extending as many as he used to. It was a high percentage to much lower, and he's happy for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, I know that a lot of us, me included, and listeners can relate to a rough tax process, and having outside perspective is always a great thing. So, a part of this conversation today is EOS. All of us on here can agree that it is a good system. I think, implementation is key in it, and really getting it set up the right way and holding people accountable, the different disciplines that come along with running the business, and those checkpoints or mile markers that are built into that system are great. I think another big takeaway is the L10 meetings, right? And you want to give a little bit of perspective, because a lot of people, they may say we run on EOS, but all that means is they incorporate these L10 meetings or some version of this meeting into their week, their month, their quarter. So give just a background on that and how that could be useful for people that maybe don't have that structure.
Sure. So if you don't have that structure, it's pretty easy to implement when you're looking at having quarterly focus. And I think we talked about that just a little earlier, and it's having that quarterly focus. What are our priorities for this incoming quarter? and who needs to be involved. And so it's with the EOS system, it's rocks, the top probably 3, maybe 4 priorities, who's working on them, and breaking them down into even smaller rocks. And so the idea is that everyone in the business has rocks to work on each quarter. And when you're having these check-in meetings, what's going on with that? Where are we at with that? Who's struggling? Are we making progress? Are we not? Do we need to move to the next thing? And so it's really a check-in. Are we making progress on what we said we wanted to? Because without a process or a system like that, we tend to just get into the busy work and handle what's in front of us and continue to put out fires instead of really working on what's going to drag us out of that sort of firefighter mode. And so, yeah, those L10 meetings are really keeping the focus on the right things to move the business and create those efficiencies and achieve the goals and the vision that the business owner and the leaders have set.
Yeah, that's great. And I think part of it is just, these meetings happen haphazardly. And, there's all the memes now. This meeting could have been an email, all the fun stuff, that's out there. So I love, just that the agenda, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be in line with the purity. I love that word of EOS, but something that we've done at DBA, and you were a part of this, as well as Amy McCarty, Director of Operations, and obviously she's on the collective side as well. Setting those agendas up in teams, which we know Christine loves teams, is such a big fan of teams. But in our teams program, I guess, if you will, there are tabs at the top of like our general channel, and we've added OneNote, correct? Isn't that the program that's there?
Yes.
And within OneNote, you can then set kind of these recurring agendas to live in teams, and they're there all week long leading up to that meeting. You can pull it up. You can kind of drop things in. Hopefully you've looked at that agenda before the meeting. And then after the meeting, you can see who is responsible for what. Obviously, as soon as that meeting is done, then you copy and create the next agenda for the next week in case anybody has anything to put into that. So that's been just a good, helpful tip. And we've got those agendas or tabs within each one of like our teams, right? So if it's a whole team agenda, it's there. If it's a lead team agenda, it's there. If it's collective, specific, it's there. So I think that's just a really helpful, thing that we've seen and implemented over the last few years or last few months. That's really kind of taken us a little bit further as far as transparency and getting ready for that meeting.
Right, Marcus, and I think you hit on it. You don't need another system, right, to get you organized, and you don't need another application to do that. Use what you have, and again, keep it pure, right? Just it's a real simple agenda that you encourage everyone to drop comments on there, or a burning issue that we need to make sure that we address in our next meeting, and everyone has access to it. It's visible and it holds everybody accountable. And it can just be as simple as a tab in Teams.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be a software, right? Like it doesn't have to be ClickUp or anything where if you have Office 365, it's included.
Exactly. Yep. You don't need anything fancy. You just need a tool that everyone's going to use. That's the best tool, the one that everyone will use.
Yeah. And Christine, we're going to make you a Teams convert at some point to where you do love it. But really our goal with that, and to your point exactly, is what is everyone going to use? And our goal over the last, I would say 3 years at least, within DBA has been utilizing whatever systems and processes and software that we already have to its fullest potential. So really going above and beyond and we can add apps for free into Teams. And so that's really the goal of when we say, oh, this app or software does that, and then we ask, does it integrate with Teams? Like, can we have one less thing to open, and obviously one less thing to buy or log into? And so can we open it directly here? Does it integrate? Does it work with? Is it free? And then one other thing in that, because Christine, you and Amy have been really integral in us documenting these things and having them available. That hasn't always been our story, as far as Marcus and I may have had an agenda for a team meeting that we put together ahead of time, but it wasn't necessarily shared with the team. And then follow up or notes from that were shared mostly. But this is so much better and so much easier. And one thing that we added that I think is so helpful. So I feel like we're on like same train of thought, or stealing from EOS, borrowing from EOS. But the quarterly goals, we make sure those are at the top for everyone to see every single week. So they're up there, and then we can put kind of status of, have we met that, accomplished it? But just having that again in a place where everyone is able to access and see it, because if not, if you don't see it, it just kind of goes by the wayside. And so I think that's been really helpful for our team, and especially our leadership team as well.
And I
So
think having those goals up there, sorry, Marcus, I think having those goals up there at the top of your agenda, and then making them a part of the meeting conversation. So what we're working toward this quarter, making that a part of the language just in your firm, that keeps everyone aware, this is what we're working on this quarter. And if something doesn't fit, then it goes into a parking lot, right? We're going to hold that. Maybe it's next quarter, or it's something else. So yeah, the visibility of the goals, visibility of the agenda, this is where we're heading. It gets everyone working in the same direction. And that's when you're going to start seeing real change happen.
yeah. And we've also included our mission and vision on those agendas. They're not at the top, they're there. So, if we were to quiz somebody in the middle, right, hopefully they would get at least impact, right? The acronym that spells out what we stand for and all that fun stuff. But the other thing is, just if you don't have an agenda, or a firm doesn't know where to start, there's this thing called ChatGPT. And I don't know if anyone's ever tried this, but if you gave ChatGPT a prompt of, you are the best EOS implementer in the world, could you write me a L10 meeting agenda? Well, maybe someone goes and tries that, and we sidestep, or maybe ChatGPT says that we can't do that for purity reasons. Who knows? So someone out there can go try it and report back.
Absolutely. And even if it isn't perfect and it's not the exact L10, if it's something that works for your firm, hey, that was free. ChatGPT just generated it for you, and edit it and use it as a tool.
Yeah. So that's a great background. I think EOS, while some people may raise the flag and say they run on it, it's like, do you really? But hey, we're not here to judge. We think as long as you have something in place that's helping you improve, helping you run your business better, call it whatever you want. The other thing that we've seen is, we've got that agenda. We kind of know where to start, maybe even how we kind of progress, but we don't know what those big rocks are, or we're kind of not clear as we should be on mission, vision, values, different things like that. And, at Collective, we have the service offering called a grip. And so Rachel probably could give a better description of that grip. We've been fortunate to work with a few firms now, and going, whether it's on site or virtual, to help them with these grips. And so part of one of the conversations was, well, we're not ready for a grip because we're doing EOS implementation. We're like, you kind of have that backwards, but okay, we're still friends and we'll still help you however we can. Maybe it's from afar for a bit, but let's talk through maybe the differences in like a grip per se, and how that can be useful in EOS.
Sure. So the way that the grip is structured, there are quarterly goals set up for the firm based on that conversation, whether that was virtual or in person on site, and identifying what the vision is for the firm. So much like the EOS process, it's identifying the vision and identifying what those goals are, what are the pain points, and then breaking that down into a plan for the firm owner, and breaking that then further down into quarterly action steps or quarterly focus areas. So there's similarity there, but where the real difference is that with a grip, it's focused individually on your firm, what you're trying to accomplish, and it is very specific to an accounting firm. No, because the consultant has the background working in with and around accountants and accounting firms and in the accounting industry to be able to impart that sort of knowledge, and all of what we see works well and what we see doesn't work well. And we can share the pitfalls and the, hey, you're going to want to do this, but you're going to want to avoid that you wouldn't have on the other side with an EOS implementation. And so having a grip is really, while EOS is a process and it's a system, the grip is actually a blueprint. It's going to get you there exactly where you want to be. And you have consultants and advisors at the ready to help you when things aren't quite progressing the way that you wanted. And we can have a chat about that and give you the push that you need. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I probably didn't do a great job, but GRIP is an acronym that stands for Goal Ready Implementation Plan. I think we may have talked about those a little bit before, but you can also go out to the collective.cpa website and see those as well. I think what we've seen since doing these GRIPs and then working with firms on the other side of it as well is the GRIP just provides the answers for you to fill in your EOS, big rocks and things like that. So if you were able to do a GRIP first, we're pulling data and just thoughts from the leadership team or the ownership and putting those down on paper. That way they can be referenced whenever things come up. But then also, we're looking at the org chart, we're looking at the current financial results, we're looking at everything that is within the firm, and then taking a step further to what are the goals? What's the plan here, and how do we get there? So I think EOS weaves into, a GRIP really well. Part of what we do on a GRIP, is just accumulating all that data. And from what you've said so far, I don't think an EOS implementer could step over that line to even do that if they wanted to.
Right. It would either be a separate engagement if they had any knowledge about the accounting industry at all. But they wouldn't be able to do that. They wouldn't be able to help you with real specifics within your accounting firm and the accounting industry. Many of them have never worked in an accounting firm, so they just wouldn't have that knowledge.
Yeah. The other benefit that we've seen, and we could talk about GRIP benefits, even though we've only done a handful, there's just so much goodness already that we're seeing out of those. But I think part of it is the advisory or maybe the group facilitation that happens on the other side of a GRIP if they opt into that. The advisor on the collective side or the facilitator on the collective side is able to point to that GRIP and say, hey, where are you at with this goal? Or I think Amy had a call last week, and I think the firm owner actually brought the GRIP to the call and was like, hey, we already checked this off. We already did this. We're moving on this, And so I think it's great just to have that roadmap or that blueprint, as you called it, as a starting point.
Absolutely. And then that's what will drive those meetings that you're having internally. Where are we at on this? Because you have that document that's been created, that GRIP, that plan to keep you on track. And it is dated. So it'll say for Q3 of 2024, these are the things you should be focusing on. And where are we at with that? So that helps that real simple OneNote agenda that you've got, but here's what we need to talk about.
Yeah. And I think the experience there, Rachel, sorry to cut you off, is like you said, it is dated. So we don't try to jam pack a lot of stuff in Q1, right? Because given our experience, we know what goes on in Q1 in most CPA firms. So you're dealing with somebody that's been there, done that, and learned from it. So sorry, Rachel.
Yeah, no, with the GRIP, it starts with a comprehensive firm analysis. And so what that really is looking at is what are the individual goals of ownership and leadership for the firm, and really setting a priority for those. Because I think what happens oftentimes, and Marcus, you and I as leaders of DBA, we have things that we want for the firm, but we have them in our minds. We don't necessarily say them out loud. We don't write them down. We don't give others a way to contribute to achieving those goals. It's more of us trying to figure out how we can delegate or how we're just going to make it happen on our own. Like we want to give that gift to our team of all of these great things, right? And so it's like we have to make it happen on our own. But the awesome thing of working in a team is that they all want to be part of that success. And so all it takes is for it to be documented and then can be delegated from there, because once it's out in the open and in plain writing, then team members can pick up and say, oh, I could help with this, or this is what I do. This is my part in making the firm or the clients or whatever the focus might be successful. One of our other GRIP completers, one of our other firms who just completed a GRIP, I know they said that they're taking their GRIP every week, or how often they meet with their leadership team. And that's really helping hold them accountable that they are taking. So each time they come up on a new action step, then they're delegating who's responsible, who's helping hold accountable. And so that's really nice that it's a lot of the decision making there and the prioritizing, which is a lot of times where we get stuck because it feels overwhelming. I want to do 5 things all at the same time. And if I do all 5 of those things, we're going to completely cause chaos in the firm. And so all of the decision making is kind of laid out and done for you. And then that way you can just go and execute. And some firms are choosing to execute on that blueprint or that plan, as Christine said, on their own with their leadership team, with their internal team members. And others are doing that with their team alongside an advisor from Collective. And so it's just kind of personal preference or what you're working on at the minute. But just having some of that documented, having help prioritizing things and putting it into actionable steps that make sense on a timeline that makes sense given seasons of the year, especially in our industry, is so helpful. And I think so far, we have nothing but raving fans of the GRIP and how, because it's just helping them to be successful with their team and clients.
And Rachel, I would say if we have anybody listening who's saying, in my firm, I don't even know where to start. I just don't even know where to start. That's where we can help with that. And that's what the GRIP does, because part of our process is really having a conversation with those firm owners and leaders. And what is it that you want your firm to be? What is your vision? What is your dream? What is your goal? And then we can help back that up with a timeline to say, okay, here's where you start. And again, it's bite-sized chunks. And we are sensitive to timing and seasonality in this industry, so we don't overwhelm with too many things. And we do have check-ins. How are you doing? Do you have any questions? And we have, again, other ways to help outside of the GRIP if you want that. But I've talked to enough firms that when I've asked, what's your 5-year plan? What's your vision for the firm? There's silence because they haven't had time to think about that. They've just been so heads down, just doing the work and putting out the fires and all the priorities and creating chaos, driving themselves crazy. So we can help with that.
Well, in the next 5 years in the accounting industry is going to look a lot different than any prior 5 years we've ever seen, right? So I think the disruption era is here as far as different, private equity, technology, outsource, all that different, thing. So you can't run a firm like you used to. So part of me on GRIP, as a business owner, as a firm owner as well, anything we do within DBA, we're going to provide services that I would want to buy. Like that, it's one of those that like Rachel and I have kind of looked at this. We don't need to do that. Like that, there's other people in the market, or we have a unique advantage to do this. And it's the same in Collective. And I think part of where even I have progressed over my career or life as a firm owner now, to move forward with something like a GRIP requires a little bit of maturity, because you feel comfortable with some of those decisions resting on your shoulders. And while you may be totally overwhelmed and burned out because they are on your shoulders, at least they're on your shoulders and you don't have to rely on other people. I think once you have a GRIP, once you bring in team members, not only do you take that load off, but you're kind of inviting other people into the success of the firm. And these don't have to be owners, like they can just be along your side. And the other thing that we've seen with conversations like this and actually going through the grips is what was once your dream. And it's so hard to sell people like on your dream and like, hey, you should weave into this dream that I have. Once you're able to expand that and open up, leadership, it really becomes a collective dream. And so I think that's the other piece where you really are able to tap into team. If that's what you want to do, if you want to lead a team, then that's really important. But I know that it is just a step in the right direction as far as maturity as a firm owner to kind of open up your mind and realize you don't have all the answers.
And what a relief that is when you get to that point, because it doesn't feel like such a heavy lift anymore. Hey, I've got this great team. I've got great people around me, and I can get some outside help, and then let's just do this thing. And it's not all on me. And getting to that point where it's, hey, we're going to try it. If it doesn't work, we'll try something else. That's where you want to be. And it's okay to make changes. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of experiment, it's not an expensive one, as far as like, hey, we'll chalk it up, we'll try it for a year, maybe it doesn't work. I think the other piece, talking about team, we're focused on team at DBA and collective both. We believe that, the individual team members contribute to a greater good than we could all do individually. And so that's why we've built out a team at collective and DBA that can serve others. And so I think that's why whenever you look at our structure and kind of how we, help other people, whether it's on the DBA side as far as clients or firms within collective, you're tapping into, when you think back to that EOS implementer that's doing it all on their own, compare that to a team where it's the collective knowledge base of all these years of experience. And collective, that sounds like a really good name for something, but it's something that we keep on coming back to. And part of the reason why the name is what it is, because, everybody's unique skill set has just added to the overall value that we can provide to others. And so I think whenever we look at, how some of these services can be different and help people better than they were before, I think it just comes back to team. 9 times out of 10, it's going to be a team.
Absolutely. The collective background, creativity, education, and experience. Yeah, it's definitely much better than just one person trying to lead it and do it all and carry that weight on their shoulders.
Yeah. And I have yet to find like a software or a technology that'll solve all of my problems. I keep looking. And so, maybe another maturity factor as a firm owner is probably the first 12 years. I loved signing up for new subscriptions and new softwares. The last 2, I love firing software vendors. I think I get more joy out of terminating software relationships and minimizing the number of logins that our team has on a daily basis. Way more than I ever did signing up for some new software.
Well, I think the software sales teams right now are cringing, but they're there to sell you the greatest thing that's going to solve all your problems.
Yeah, they're there to perfect their pitch now to that on how you can consolidate all apps into one and how theirs is the magic bullet, right? I think that's the same pitch that we've heard for 30, 40 years from those guys. So it's no different, just do what you can. And sometimes it is using Excel. It is using OneNote. That's all in your stuff. So I would say, as we leave others today, it's like, it's not rocket science, it's discipline. And I think part of it is just using what you already have at your disposal and maybe finding the right team to help you alongside your journey.
And one more thing before we go, I wanted to just highlight, Christine, that within our collective team, you bring a lot of unique and very helpful skills to our team. But something that stands out to me that really I just aspire to also have, like you, is your organization and your follow through. And just in case, somebody's listening and they have gotten nothing from our entire conversation, I think if you will share with us kind of how you are able to do that. I feel like it's a superpower because you work with other businesses, you work with accounting firms, you have a family, you are helping our DBA team, the collective team. So you have a lot of irons in the fire. How do you stay so organized and are able to follow up and follow through on a routine basis?
So for me, it's the calendar. It is absolutely keeping a digital calendar. Now, I will take notes. I love to take notes. It just works for me. I remember them, but then I'll put them somewhere else. But truly, the calendar is how I keep track of where I need to be, when I need to follow up, what's going on. And so I will put tasks on there as well as meeting agendas, meeting invitations. And if it's a task, when it's done, I will edit it and put done right in front of it so I can see. And if I haven't done that, well, okay, then that one's overdue. So it really is that. But it goes back to, I think Marcus said it, it's discipline too. And it's making sure that after every call, after every meeting, I'm putting a note or something on my calendar, and then kind of going full circle back to my daughter, who is the planner, right? We have a family calendar. And if she's doing something and I didn't see it on the calendar, she knows it better get on the calendar because mom needs to know what's going on. Probably not so much anymore now that she's in college. Maybe I don't want to know, but but that's what keeps me organized, both professionally and work and with the firms that I work with, as well as collective. It's really just, it's that discipline, putting it in there. So when I go to it, I see what's happening.
I love that. I think that's important for us, all leaders, to hear. If you know that you intend to do something in the future, go ahead and put it on the calendar, schedule it on the calendar. If it's on your calendar, you are a lot more likely to follow through and make it happen than if you in your mind say, I want to do that, or I intended to do that, I thought about doing that. If you think about it, put it on the calendar. If you get to that point in time in the future and you're like, that's not needed anymore, then you have one thing to check off your to-do list for that day. So I think that that's really important and really helpful. And I think it's awesome. We have had the experience of having an advisor alongside us for a lot of our journey of firm ownership. And that extra layer of accountability from our advisors has been so important to the success of our firm, our team, and our clients, for sure.
Awesome. Well, appreciate kind of the background on EOS and, how something as good as EOS can even be better, maybe with other things like a grip and the team to kind of help you navigate all those big rock goals that people have coming out of it. So appreciate your time today, Christine. Thanks for being on this journey with us as an advisor at Collective. And Rachel, you want to close us out?
Yeah. Thanks so much for being here. And we look forward to seeing you on the next.
Thanks.
Thanks for hanging with us to the end of another episode. Leave us a review with your thoughts, comments, and feedback on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss any future episodes. Join us again next week for another great conversation.